And welcome back to Bars Loaded Podcast with Ben and Nick. I've just been fucking recording with the microphone around the wrong way.
Classic Nick, though.
Oh, dude, fucking hell. How can someone be so R-worded and like actually
Since
function
since
in
when
the
do you
world?
censor yourself?
I don't know. It's early.
I
I'm
was
a
like,
little bit.
is
I'm more like coherent now than usually what I am in the afternoon.
is this just like you've gone to uni for a couple of days and now you're like, I'm going to be a little bit like censored and politically correct?
Oh, dude, you could not imagine. I mean, you probably could imagine, but for everyone out there, just imagine me in a formal education setting. I stuck out like a sore thumb in so many different ways.
But to be fair, man, like other than like a powerlifting setting or like a tall man convention, you probably do stick out like a fucking sore thumb anywhere you go. You're like what, 6'6", flaming red beard, shaved head, like you're not exactly subtle.
Yeah, covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
Uh, and yeah, dude, I just stood out for so many different reasons. Like, I was by far the biggest person there out of,
Yeah.
for everyone that's listening that doesn't know. I just got back from 2 days in Bathurst for intensive labs, 2 days of back to back intensive labs um, for anatomy and physiology subject that I'm taking at university via distance learning, so learning on the internet, which is how I do everything these days via the internet. I've just turned into one of those internet people. Um, but apparently, university is still one of those things where you have to, like, they still believe that people exist in the real world and you had to go and, like, actually interact with people and do things off the computer, which was quite weird.
Yuck.
Yeah, it was odd, dude. I was like, wow, these people aren't on my screen. This is weird.
Yeah.
You mean I can't just press end when I want this to stop?
I'm just gonna mute you.
Yeah, it was really odd. But when I got there, you know, it was in Bathurst, so I got up quite early on Monday morning and just drove all the way there. So it took me about 4 hours to drive there
Mhm.
um, for a 9 a.m. start. And
Jeez,
then,
that's early for you.
yeah, well, 9 a.m.'s an early start. So, yeah, I got up at, I got up at 3 and I left at 4
Mhm.
so that I could kind of stop and get some breakfast and get some petrol on the way. And I got there about a quarter past 8ish, and then I, you know, slow turned my music down so I could see properly, and found a park at the university and kind of found my room and went up for the little introduction session that they had at 9 a.m. before we started labs. But yeah, as soon as I got in, there was 4 groups. We were split into 4 groups, and each group had about 23 to 27 people per group. So what's that? Oh, about 100 or a little over 100 people in total that were there in the room to start the day, and I was well and truly the largest human there. It wasn't even close.
What was like kind of like the next like biggest person there? You reckon?
Dude, there wasn't that many. So if we talking about guys, like there wasn't that many guys there that were over 6 foot
Mm.
or like around that 6 foot kind of. Everyone was super average sized and young. So
Yeah, no shit.
I'm 38 in May. I don't think there was another person there that was. There was one guy there who's a tradie who's taking a new career path. He was a little bit older, but he was mid-20s, mid to late 20s. And then I'm 38, and the rest was mean age, probably 19.
Yeah, but I mean, you're generally going to get that in a new uni course. So, like, do you know my friend Demir?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's like what, fucking 6'4", 6'5", somewhere around there as well. And at one point, he was tipping the scales like 150 something. I think now he's down to like 120 something, similar to you.
Yeah.
Um, and he's just finished his chiropractor degree, and he's I think 41.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
So like he went back to uni when he was like, yeah, like 36 or something like that.
Yeah.
And he was just like, he's like, yeah, everyone is just super super young here. But I feel like when you do go back to do further study when you are in your 30s, like you're naturally going to be around kids.
Yeah. It was really odd. 2 days, just like it was fun, but it was odd in the sense that I initially felt really out of place, and I felt really out of place for the entire 2 days, just because I just kind of didn't really have anyone to talk to,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like I was
You
kind
don't
of
need anyone else other than me, Nick.
I know, but I couldn't really talk to you because I was in class all day, so
Just FaceTime me. I'll do the degree with you.
I kind of found these groups of guys to hang around that liked footy as well. So we kind of talked about footy a little bit in the breaks, but it was almost awkward even then because I was like, I'm not using the same language as you. We're not thinking about the same types of things. It was just a really big barrier, and it just really highlighted like how not 19 I am.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, but
You
sometimes I still feel like it.
you mean like them being 19 and you being 38, you don't feel like you're their age?
It's a phenomenon that I can't explain.
Oh well, it's all fun and games.
Yeah, it was odd, but so I stood out because I was the biggest. I stood out because I was the oldest, and then I feel like,
You
and I
stood out
haven't
because you're also
asked,
the strongest.
definitely the strongest.
Obviously.
I was really happy. I DM'd Jamie, was one of the guys that I was friends with at World Gym. He's a big guy, super good bodybuilder. Retired now,
Bradshaw?
but yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
man,
Jamie's a good.
he
We had some really good chats before I moved back, but yeah, he's a
yeah,
fucking legend.
legend, great coach, knows his shit, like really good dude. I He's probably the like one of the most shredded people I've ever seen on stage. Like his stage photos are insanely lean.
Hmm.
Uh, but he laugh reacted and DM'd me when I put up that story, and I was like, biggest guy here, only exam that matters. And he was like, fuck yeah, it is. And then I said, 25 kilos down and still big. I'll take that. And he was like, fucking oath, take that to the bank every day.
Fucking oath.
Yeah, it's like that was kind of nice to because I've been feeling really skinny lately. You
Mm.
know, when you lose a little bit of weight and like everyone else's perception is that you look healthier and you look bigger and you look more jacked and all of
Hmm.
those things, but like your own perception is that you're 30 kilos lighter, so you feel skinny.
Yeah.
And I've just been walking around like feeling like I don't even look like I train anymore and that I've fucking got a pencil neck and I should just study and not do anything else. Start quoting studies. But apparently not so much.
And then you go around the people that actually do quote studies, and you're like, "No, I'm definitely
Ah,
still a meathead."
yeah, definitely still train. But yeah, it was and then I feel like I'll have to ask because I'm now Instagram friends with some of the guys from the course, but
Hmm.
I'll have to ask what their perception was of me. But I also feel like I probably stood out because I was like the creepy guy in the back that just didn't say anything. I sat in
The
at the
creepy,
back.
massive guy in the back.
I sat at the back of every single class and just shut my fucking mouth and didn't say a single thing,
Mm,
except for the two disagreements that I got into during
amazing.
the 2 days, which I feel like is pretty good. That's a good strike rate
Out
for
of
two
curiosity,
days.
what were the disagreements on?
Are we going to do it?
Oh, fucking yeah, we are.
Okay. Oh. you've caught me at the right time too,
I
because
know, I know.
I'm like kind of a little bit ready to go because I'm a pretty heavily caffeinated at the moment.
Hmm.
Um, and nicotinated, is that a word? Nicotinated, caffeinated, and nicotinated.
Nicotine.
Um, nicked. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm
No,
it
no,
at the moment.
scarily words.
whatever, whatever it is, I'm it right now. So I'm flying. I'm actually on my second. I've had three coffees and two monsters.
And it's 11 a.m.
Yeah. So what's that? What's an average caffeine in a coffee? Like a double espresso.
To be honest, I actually don't know.
Do you have your phone there?
I will
Go
get up.
go average caffeine content in one espresso shot.
Average caffeine in an espresso shot.
I don't think it'll be huge.
So, I mean, these are all like, I mean, literally, there are three things here. Where it's like an 8 ounce, again, fucking Americans. 8 ounce cup of regular coffee contains 95 milligrams of caffeine. Another one is an average 1 ounce espresso shot has 63 milligrams of caffeine. The average caffeine content in an espresso shot is about 63.6 grams.
Okay, so let's just say 75, just somewhere in the middle. So
Mm-hmm.
if you go to your calculator on your phone now and go 75 times 6, because I had three double espressos,
Mm-hmm.
and then go plus 153
Mm-hmm.
plus 153.
756 milligrams of caffeine.
Okay, so just a little bit shy of a gram. That's not too bad. I'll be over a gram by the end of the day. But that's also 4,000 milligrams of taurine.
Yeah,
So pretty caffeinated, which is good,
good.
and early because we're recording this one early in the day. So
Early in the
um,
day, but later in the week.
later in the week, earlier in the day, coming off 2 days. So I'm pretty ripe to just let some things go.
You got
Um,
the Riz is strong.
the Riz is strong. I haven't. So this is the other thing. I've been predominantly silent now for 2 days. So there's a lot of words that are just built up, ready to come out.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
So I have a client that's starting with me online next week, and it's funny because I know she listens to the podcast, so I know she's going to hear this. Um, she went and saw a physio yesterday, or the day before, for like her knee. So I did a consult with her a couple of weeks ago, and quite a unique case. But she went into a physio to get her knee assessed because I was like, obviously, with what's going on there, like, let's just go get a physio to have a look at it, make sure that there's framework for us to be able to work together. And her physio pretty much told her, oh well, when your knee's bending, your quad's not firing. That's why you have knee pain.
When her knees bending,
Her quad doesn't fire apparently.
okay. Do quads bend knees?
You tell me.
None of the quads that I've ever seen have bent knees.
Mm.
Usually
So
they straighten knees,
yeah, so
but
I'll bring it.
but
So I'll bring the email up real quickly. But I was like, when she sent me that, I'm like, we might look for a second opinion there.
yeah, that's a very unique case. I wonder if she has quads on the back of her legs.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So the direct quote from the email is, she did mention something about my quads not firing when I bend at the knee. Um, but who knows? So going to go and get a second opinion. I'm like, yeah, good idea. I think obviously she may have been talking about like when the knee's bent and trying to extend the knee. But I'm like, even if she is extending the knee, how does she extend the knee if the quads aren't firing?
There's no other way.
Yeah, like I said, I'm like, unless you have severely like severed the quads to the point where they don't have an attachment anymore, that may be the time. But then, like, I think you might have bigger issues.
Mm,
But it is
that's funny.
baffling.
It's such a smoke bomb term, isn't it? Like
Actually, I'm gonna rant.
X
I'm gonna rant.
X
I'm gonna
isn't
rant.
firing. Well,
I'm
like it is.
oh, I'm gonna rant so hard right now. I've
Do
had
it.
two instances this week where, like, obviously as coaches, we quite often get told by people who have higher qualifications than us, "Oh, you need to respect your scope of practice." It has to fucking work the same way. So not only do we have physio over here that's like, "Oh, well, your quads aren't firing when you bend your knee, and that's why you've got knee pain." Bullshit. The other instance that I'm gonna dude, this gets me fucking fired up so badly. I had a consult uh, on Monday, and this guy came in and he's like, "Yeah, like, he essentially wants to do body recon work." And he's like, "Yeah, I've seen other trainers, I've gone and seen my GP to help me with some weight loss, and my GP pretty much told me that if I've done what I've done and I haven't been able to lose the last little bit of weight, surgery is going to be his best option." And I'm like, "Cool, man." I'm like, "Have you ever tracked your calories?" "Oh, no, I've never done that, but I eat really healthily." I'm like, "Amazing." I'm like, "Your GP's a fucking moron." I'm like apparently the amount of time that they actually spend on nutrition in a medical degree is like ghastly low, which because
Mm.
obviously it's not their field. But that's like saying that, "Oh, well, as personal trainers, we talk a little bit about macros and nutrition in our Cert 3 and Cert 4. It's like if we aren't legally allowed to write meal plans and provide like in-depth nutrition advice, why the fuck can doctors sit there and go, 'Oh, well, you've tried eating less and it hasn't helped you lose weight, you need surgery'?" Like, where the fuck, like, how is that okay?
This would actually be a really cool topic, I think, for Em to expand upon when we do the podcast with her.
Yep.
Because it's something she speaks about every single day, and she would have a much deeper insight on it than what I would. But
Hmm.
they're just kind of some of the things that I've heard her say, and I probably butchered it, but
Yeah, because yeah, I guess like where I was sort of coming from is, again, for sake of the sake of it, like, I agree with you, like it's a tool, but I think as well as like a teaching tool to give people framework to go, "Hey, this is energy balance for you,
Mhm.
and this is how we can structure." Like, because what I noticed with a lot of the people that I'm talking to when they come in and they have their consults with me, the amount of people that are like maybe getting in like 50 grams of protein a day.
Yeah, it's wild.
And I'm like, how do you expect to have a good physique if you're chronically under eating protein? Like, your body needs that to build and repair muscle, plus a
Hmm.
myriad of other things.
Hmm.
Um, but trying to get them to understand, it's like, oh, like, you know, cheese and crackers as lunch is probably not a suitable option for you if your goals are X, Y, and Z.
Hmm.
But I also feel like a doctor just outrightly going, "Oh, like, yeah, surgery is the option. We're not going to teach you anything about nutrition in terms of like
It's
even talking
horrible.
to people and be like, do you know what macronutrients are?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Okay, cool. Well, like everything we eat has like protein, fats, and carbohydrates in it. Each of these units have different energy values, and that's essentially what makes up your energy value for the day."
Yeah. Look, here's the thing, man. This is why this is what it comes down to, and this is why it's so dangerous, is because when people are at the stage where they need surgery or they qualify for the weight loss surgery, a lot of the time, way more often than not, it's much deeper of an issue than just they're eating too much.
Fucking oath it is.
It
There's almost always psychological issues as well.
almost always. So here's the thing. If all you're doing is just then surgically restricting the amount of food someone can eat without addressing the underlying issues as to why they got to this point in the first place, it's
Mhm.
never going to change. It literally is never going to change. Like I've seen it. I've seen it firsthand. These people still try and go to the same coping mechanisms that got them in that situation in the first place, end up like projectile vomiting because their stomach can't handle it, and then continuing down the same path of like using food as a coping mechanism every day.
Mhm.
And bro, it's happened in my family. Like I see it all the time firsthand.
Yeah.
Um, that's the real issue is like,
Mm.
instead of just prescribing surgery, how about you write a referral out to a dietitian that can help you,
Mm.
that who's literally its job it is to understand this stuff at a much deeper level than just like, let's tie your stomach up.
Yeah.
Like maybe that's the option that is required for a lot of people,
Mhm.
which at that point it probably is. But along with that, let's then like send them to people that can help.
Yeah.
Let's figure out why that's a coping mechanism. Let's figure out the underlying issues and let's work on those along with the weight loss so that it doesn't come back and it doesn't continue to be an issue, or so that you don't turn to other coping mechanisms that could be
Mm.
worse,
Yeah.
because that happens a lot too. So
Certainly does.
it's just it is a topic that's surprisingly quite close to my heart, unfortunately, because
On to it, man.
yeah, it's a tough one. But yeah, uni was good, dude. Oh man, the drive home last night, not a vibe.
How come?
So the drive there was fucking awesome, dude. Have you ever driven? You probably haven't. You probably don't even know where Bathurst is, other than the race cars. So Bathurst is on the other side of the Blue Mountains.
Yeah.
So you kind of like go through Penrith, up over the Blue Mountains, down the other side. Em grew up in the Blue Mountains, and then her grandparents lived on the other side of the Blue Mountains in a town called Hartley, which is a couple of hours out of the Blue Mountains, just before Bathurst. And she was like, "Go up this way. It's really pretty drive. It'll probably be the quickest way to get there, and you'll really like it. And then you'll be able to see like where I grew up and where my grandparents grew up, and I spent a lot of time there." So I was driving through there on the way, beautiful, up the freeway, took one turn off North Connects, another turn off onto this highway, and then that highway just went all the way out, up over the Blue Mountains, all the way down, all the way out to Bathurst. So 3 turns the entire way. Beautiful. Cruise control the whole way, smooth sailing, sunshine, no traffic. Loved it. Way home, I jump in my car after my last lap, put on GPS, take me to Newcastle. Fastest route, chose that. And didn't really pay attention to what the fastest route was. Kind of assumed that it would just be the same way that it brought me. It wasn't. It was a different way. And it took me up over these god awful mountains, this windy ass road. And that windy ass road went for almost 2 hours up and over this mountain and back down the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It was so windy and hairpinny that it was 60 kilometers most of the way, 60 kilometers an hour, with 35-kilometer an hour turns. Like, that's how hectic they were. They're like, you need to slow down to 30 Ks to get around this corner and not die. Add to that, I didn't have my glasses on. Add to that, it was dark. Add to that, it was pissing down rain. So I could see at maybe like 35% without my glasses,
Mm-hmm.
minus 10% because of the rain, because it was pissing down, minus 5% because of the glare on the road from the rain, makes it impossible to see anything on the road. You're just guessing. Minus another 10% for the headlights from the cars coming, literally just blinding everything because it's shining off my wet windscreen and the wet road and my unglasses eyes, and I could see at like 5%.
Amazing.
And I am just hanging on for dear life going over this mountain. Anytime someone came up behind me, I pulled over and just let them pass because the last thing I needed was more lights in my rear vision mirror. I just already couldn't see.
Mm.
And I couldn't see the road. I drive a BMW that has run flat tires, which means BMW's fantastic idea was put run flat tires on the car and don't give them a spare. So if I hit a pothole and my tire blows, I don't have a spare tire. My tire just inflates and I can drive for another 80 kilometers, which usually is okay. But I was much further than 80 kilometers from home. So that tire wouldn't have even got me home, which means I would have had to stop somewhere. It was There was no tire shops open, which meant I would have had to sleep in my car and wait till the morning to get a new tire on my car, or get a 3 hour Uber home from the middle of nowhere, which I didn't have reception to call the Uber. All of this on well over 2 grams of caffeine, well over 50 grams of nicotine, and a day full of lectures. My anxiety was through the roof. You can imagine.
Mm.
I was jittering.
So jittery.
I was so jittery. And so, yeah, it was definitely an experience and a half. I
Yeah.
hit I hit a few potholes, which I have PTSD from because the last time I hit a pothole was my wedding day. I hit a pothole on the way to get my hair cut prior to and beard trim prior to my wedding, and my tire went flat. And I had to get the car towed and borrow my brother's car to get back to the wedding venue in time to get married. So I was just thinking every time I hit a pothole, I was thinking, this game over. Like, I'm stuck in the Blue Mountains for the rest of my life. This is how it ends.
I love how dramatic you can be sometimes.
Like, that was going through my head the whole time.
Mm.
But we made it home.
That's the main part.
We made it home. And now you all get to listen to my voice through a microphone that is now turned around the right way and hopefully sounding extremely crisp. And we live to tell the tale.
It's always a good start.
How's your start of the week been?
Uh, Interesting. I mean, like, had a really good weekend. So we had like the first game of the basketball season on Saturday, and we finished the night with a big fat W, which is always a good time. So I think they ended up winning by, I think it was like 27 or somewhere thereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, very commanding. So at halftime it was 60 to 35 in our favor. So obviously, like, a great first half of basketball. The other team kind of got a bit more pace in the second half, and they doubled their score, so they ended up on like 70 or somewhere thereabouts. Which, I mean, like, there was a few moments where it's like, yeah, they got a little bit of a run, but never really to a point where the game was ever really close. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
sort of always were able to maintain about a 20-point lead for the majority of the game. Sometimes blowing it out a little bit more, sometimes sort of coming in a little bit less, but for the most part, around that 20 point. So, yeah, I think we won by, 24, 25, somewhere thereabouts. But I'll tell you what, like, the difference in team sports versus sports like powerlifting, where, like, as much as people do the whole, like, oh, even though it's an individual sport, like, it's still a team sport. Like, at the end of the day, you are the one up on the platform and it's just you.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on the court, there's you and four other guys on your team, and there's five other guys that are influencing how well you can do. Like, there's no one on the platform yelling psych outs to you to try and distract you and make you miss. Like, it's you in a bar. Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But even so, just like, obviously how the game can influence. Oh, sorry, how the people on the court can influence the speed and the settings of the game changes quite a lot. Obviously, at quarter time, you stay out on the court. At halftime, like you go back into your the locker rooms, you have your debrief, you sort of like set the intention for the next half, and then just like the culture around team sports is so fucking wild. So, for example, our club has this like tradition that they do, where for the first win of the season, we go. So game finishes, the coaches, we all sort of like hang out, have a bit of a debrief on the court. All the players walk into the locker room, and then like as we're sort of walking back to the locker room, like the head coach from the junior team, he came to the game after the juniors had played theirs, and he walked up to me and like the assistant coach was like, "Hey guys, like I need your phones real quick," and I'm like, well, fine, I don't have one on me. He's like, perfect, grabs his phone off the other guy's like, cool, head in there, we'll meet you in there. Right, okay. So we walk into the locker room. Everyone's sort of like standing around waiting for like our coaches, like their head coach to come in. Head coach comes in, he's like, all right, guys, like, so like really, really well done on the win tonight. It's like great way to set the intention for the season. The club that we played, they thought they were going to be contenders for the championship and we fucking smoked them. So like, the whole cliche saying of like, you haven't done shit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we've done shit tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, and part of, the way that as a club we celebrate our first win for the season is pretty much if you're new to the club, you need to get into the middle right now.
Nice.
So
You got
like,
naked, didn't you?
obviously, no, by this point, I was already naked.
Yeah.
But they're like, all right, like so there was me, the assistant coach, who's like a friend of mine. I think like two other players. They've like got us in the middle, and they like sing the club song like really fucking loud, like to the sort of level you'd expect them to sing it if we'd won like a championship. And everyone like opens up like the lids of their drink bottle, and just like starts fucking throwing water at you, and we were fucking soaked from head to toe.
Nice.
And they're like this is how we celebrate a win.
Yeah.
And then like one of the other guys apparently wasn't in the locker room, and this was his first time winning, and he's over here from the US, so he's like in the middle by himself, getting absolutely smashed by everyone. But it's just like that environment. It's just so fucking good.
It is.
Like it genuinely just changes the atmosphere. It changes the energy. Like the way that the guys sort of like all came together on like essentially like comp day. Like this is something that the coaches we'd sort of spoken about throughout the preseason. I was like, obviously there's a few little parts that aren't quite gelling as well. But I said, I'm like, look, I'm going to be pretty surprised if it doesn't come together when it comes to like game time. Like I feel like these guys are going to be able to sort of like utilize the energy and the nature of a game to really pull together, and it works beautifully. Whereas I feel like in powerlifting terms, it's the whole like, oh yeah, but it'll be there on comp day. Whereas for basketball, like I kind of feel like that concept does apply a lot more.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really cool with it as well, where in saying that like it changes the energy or some of the effect of like just the energy was so big, and it just the whole environment, it just kind of feels like you're part of something bigger than
Bigger than
yourself.
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's something that I've always found with team sports, and it's actually something that when Em and I sat down a year and a half, 2 years ago now, when we decided to start Enzi, and that was something that I distinctly remember bringing up and putting down on the vision board as something that I wanted to try and recreate within our team.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a team feel, a team environment towards strength training, and that this is something bigger than just you and something bigger than just what you're trying to do for your personal pursuits. You're part of this now and you're part of this team now. And in this team, we look after each other, we support each other, we help each other. And what you're doing is a reflection of us as a team, not just as a reflection of you yourself. And I think that that's led to some really cool things happening within our business that do kind of replicate that team environment. Like Crystal is a perfect example of that. My client Crystal quite literally has almost become, my comp day assistant coach at this point. She will come to every single NZ athletes competition and
Mm-hmm.
help handle them on the day. So I obviously handle them on the day. Crystal literally comes to load plates
Mm.
to everyone's comps, every single
And like,
comp.
what a fucking amazing display of like teammateship, if that's
Yeah,
the word I'm looking
she
for.
she comes to people's comps that she's never met.
Mm.
They're online clients, and I'll just be like, "Oh yeah, I've got this comp, in Sydney," and she'll be like, "Cool, where's it at? What time? I'll come and load plates for them."
Mm.
Like, how good is that? That is being part of something bigger yourself, and I think you really hit the nail on the head when you mentioned that, because what we often see in powerlifting is nowadays, I think we spoke about this a little bit with Brandon. When I first started powerlifting, it was a lot more crew based or team based, and
Yeah.
you know you would support your crew and you would help your crew. And I think that still is the case, maybe in other countries a little bit more so than Australia, but I feel like Australia's definitely lent much harder into the individual sport side of things, where it's just a very much an individual pursuit. You see these like God,
I have a take on this as well.
you see these, it just becomes very like self-centered and very a self-centered pursuit and approach, and these people are all on these hero arcs of their own like superhero journey that they think that they're on because they can squat 300 kilos. And I feel like it brings a much better feel to the sport, a much better environment for success when you can frame it more so in a sense of like, I'm not the hero of this story. I'm just a role player in this team, and this is much bigger than I am. And yeah, cool, I can squat 300 kilos, but like, so fucking what? Like, that person can squat 150 kilos, and that's a PB, and I'm gonna fucking act like it's 1,000 kilos because they're my teammate and I'm pumped.
Do you want to know my take on this whole thing?
Of course.
So I think nowadays, because obviously online coaching is so prevalent, every second person is a fucking online coach. Every second person's a fucking online powerlifting coach, which I don't think there's nothing wrong with it inherently. But if I think back to when I was competing and like very early on, like there was PTC gyms were everywhere. There was PTC South Melbourne, there was PTC Sydney, there was PTC Brisbane. Like obviously there's HQ down here. There was like Eltham. There was PTCs everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and like especially at like local comps here in Vic, it'd be like, oh well, like there's the PTC HQ crew, there's the PTC South Melbourne crew, there's the PTC Eltham crew, there's like the strong Geelong crew. There were crews from all these different gyms, and it was like clubs coming together for local competition, as it would be like at a round robin for like footy or basketball or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
You'd go to nationals, and it was like, yeah, like Team Vic is coming up, and Team Victoria is made up predominantly of PTC HQ, South Melbourne, and whatever other gym it was. And then at the end of like GPC nationals, you would have your winning state.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so like I said, I'll make one point and then I'll go on to another point. Now you go to a comp, and it's like, yeah, there are some businesses, like for example, like my mate Alex, he has his business Deacon Strong,
Mm-hmm.
and they went to I think it was the APL comp a couple of weeks ago that I handled at, and I think they had like 8 or 9 lifters for the day. They had other team members that were there helping out, kind of like you were mentioning with Crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that element of like bringing a team to a comp is fantastic. But
Mm-hmm.
as well, now with there being a lot more feds, I feel like with there being a lot more feds, a lot more individual coaches, I feel like it's watered down that team concept a lot more than it previously was. So there was a comp a couple of weeks ago that I handled row at, and at a gym out in Maidstone, Victoria, called the Strength Fortress. It's run by a very, very, very talented tested lifter that we have here in Australia, JP Cauchi. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. If I'm not, I apologize. But uh, each year they run like their team championship. So they have like a challengers division and a pro division. So as a challenger division, obviously like your objective is to score as many points as you can based on sort of like where you place in your category. And then if you place at a certain point in the top X amount of teams, then you get the chance to go into the pro division for the following year. And obviously each year there's a winner of the pro division, there's a winner of the challengers division. But they've done a really, really, really good job with that approach at creating kind of like the team feel to whether or not like and kind of bringing out like that team feel to powerlifting, and then like actually making it like a fun competition around like a team sport.
Yeah. So
Because it's,
do all the lifters do all the events?
yeah, so like you might have, so there's like there will be 4 competitors per team.
Mm-hmm.
So there might be like you might have someone in the men's under 100 kilo, you might have a female in the under 52s, another female in say the under 82s, and then a guy in the 140s.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on where they place in those categories, they earn points. And then
Mm-hmm.
based on the amount of points you accumulate by the end of the day, that obviously ranks your team. So obviously, if everyone in your team does incredibly well and they all rank first, you score maximum points.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you can. I think there might be a thing as well where like if you end up like as like best lifter or whatever it is, you score like additional points. So there's a way that obviously if 2 teams had like people in all these different divisions and it equaled first, it would then be like, oh well, based on like dots,
Yeah.
it would then get extra points, and it kind of filters it out that way. I'm not exactly 100% sure how their scoring system works, but I would imagine it would be something similar.
Yeah, because I
But
know Steel and Stone were trying to do something similar last year with the teams event, but did that? I don't think that ever went ahead, did it?
I don't think it did, no.
It just kind of stopped.
Mm. But these guys have been running it for like a couple of years now, and they've done a fucking sensational job at building a really cool culture around it. Like the gyms, it's not a huge gym,
Mm-hmm.
um, but you go in there for like the team champs, and it is literally fucking packed.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are a few teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was part of Nexus for a little while, and that definitely had a bit of a team environment around it as much as remote coaching could. I met a ton of people that I still talk to now, just through being coached by Nexus, and they were
Mm-hmm.
also coached by Nexus, and we linked up on Instagram and became friends and started talking, and that's still going to this day, which I think is really cool. Um, and we spoke to Brandon on the podcast last week, which will be coming out next week, or when this podcast airs, it'll be the Friday episode of that week. So, uh, if you listen to our podcast, definitely listen to that podcast because that was an
Mm-hmm.
absolutely incredible
Doozy.
conversation.
Yep.
And he has done a fucking amazing job at creating a team environment through Epic, which he's from a team environment as well. He's a footy player. He knows exactly what we're talking about. He feels the same way. And I think if more people try and create that team environment, it's only going to benefit powerlifting.
Yeah,
Like,
I'd agree.
it's just a matter of finding ways that you can do that. But I think that also comes from the top down. So it's on us as coaches to find out ways that we can create a team environment within our own teams. It
Mhm.
comes down to meet directors figuring out ways to make powerlifting fun and a little bit more team oriented instead of just a singular focus, if that's what they want to do. But I think it could be a net positive for everyone if we could find ways to do that for sure.
Yeah. I still think if we, as a whole, for powerlifting in Australia, like obviously we have a lot of different feds at the moment. I think it would be fucking really cool if we had like a tested nationals and untested nationals. And it didn't matter which fed you compete in, and there's a reigning federation champion at the end of it.
Yeah, well, that's what those invitation meets were supposed to do,
Yeah.
aren't they? Like that was the idea between some of those invitational meets was it doesn't matter what federation you compete in, we're gonna
Just for the
invite
best
the
lifters.
best of the best, and whoever comes out on top is obviously the best because they won this meet that doesn't have any affiliation to any federation.
Yeah, and that's like, that's where I've always really enjoyed events like Pro Raw, where they're just like, yeah, we will invite anyone and everyone. We don't care if you compete IPF, we're still going to invite you because we would love you to be here. Obviously, understand they probably can't be there. Um, but like an event like Big Dogs, for example, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like there's no formula, it's literally just the biggest total wins.
Mm.
Because
Speaking of speaking of big dogs, should we mention like the biggest dog of all and the absolutely incredible performance at 93 kilos on the weekend?
I I don't think we can run a podcast where we talk about powerlifting as much as we do and not fucking talk about that.
I'll say this on air, and I've said it privately to a few people, and I don't even give a fuck what anyone thinks. He's the goat of powerlifting.
Yeah.
And I also had this conversation the other day. I'm not one to compare eras of anything. I think that that's just an impossible task. Like, I personally think Jordan's the goat of basketball, but I'm also not going to argue with anyone that says LeBron's the goat because LeBron's really fucking good, and it's impossible to compare eras. Like, put LeBron in Jordan's era, he probably wins six in a row as well. Put Jordan in today's era, he's probably fucking unbeatable as well. Like, and he probably has a super long career because it's less physical. So it's really impossible to compare cross eras like that. But John Hack is in the conversation for the greatest of all time, and I don't care who argues with me. You're wrong.
Do you want me to let you on a little fun fact?
Yeah,
His total was over 11 times body weight.
it's just so ridiculous.
Like he so 1,043.5 at 93.45. So 2,300 pound total at 206 pounds. Like that is fucking insane. He squatted 365 pounds, sorry, 365 kilos for 804 pounds. He benched 252 and a half for 556, and he deadlifted 426 for a 939 pound deadlift. Like that man, and I hate this saying normally, but like he's fucking built different.
Oh, it's it's just so insane to look at those numbers at that body weight and watch the videos and see the way that he executed them.
Like for context as
Insane.
well, like his squat was in sleeves, which is fucking insane. It was high bar as well, which I know people always do the whole like, oh, he should low bar squat, and it's like, fuck off. Like he's so strong, let him be strong.
Hmm.
His bench, like, it's not a crazy wide grip. It's not a massive arch. Like he's still got a pretty substantial range of motion on his bench. The pause was legit. It was amazing. His deadlift is conventional,
Yeah,
and
badass.
like even like obviously like his overall like insane strength apart, he's just a great lifter to watch.
Hmm. He is a great lifter to watch. You know what I really love watching about John Hack, other than his incredible feats of strength?
What's that?
He's not a fat piece of shit.
No, the cunt is fucking jacked.
Yeah, jacked, lean, like looks like he lifts. If you look at him in the street, you're like, oh, that dude goes to the gym.
He looks like he probably counts calories too.
I don't reckon he does.
No, I don't reckon he does either.
I reckon he's too fucking cool for that.
I was just trying to.
Counting calories is not cool, man. Come on, be cool about this. Be cool. Be cool.
Be cool, man. Be cool.
He goes to festivals. Like he does cool shit. Like you see him at concerts all the time. He's just jacked. He like dresses up as Iron Man or Mr. America or whatever he does. He's
Mr.
fucking
America.
Captain
That
America.
that's
Whatever,
like
man.
the
Come
most
on.
boomer thing you've ever said.
I almost am a boomer. Shut the fuck up.
That'd be like going, oh, he dresses up like Spider Boy.
Fuck. Fucking hell. What did I say, Mr. America?
Yeah.
It's not that, is it? It's Captain America.
Correct.
Fuck.
You're like, look at me. I'm the captain now.
We watched that the other day.
Such a good movie.
Yeah, Em had never seen it.
So good.
Is that a true story?
Yeah.
Fuck, I love Tom Hanks.
No comment.
He's a good actor.
Great actor.
Yeah, he's a really good actor.
But yeah, John Hack is.
Yeah, John Hack. That's what we were talking about. Sorry, fuck. I just went to another planet for a second. Yeah, John Hack, dude. John Hack looks like he lifts. He's jacked. He's shredded. He's in shape. He does conditioning work. He does some strongman stuff for fun in the off season. He trains like someone who wants to be strong. He still moves well. He's fit. He looks good. He obviously doesn't overeat. He doesn't try and get stronger by just getting 10 kilos fatter. Like he understands that getting 10 kilos fatter is probably not going to make him that much more stronger, and he could probably just get stronger instead of doing that. He just does all of the things that I like.
I have to say, though, I would love to see Hack sit at like 100, because he would probably still sit at like 100 at like sub 10% body fat.
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? Like he competed in the under 100s only because he pulled out of his weight cut at 93. So what if he sat, a little bit over 100, did a little bit of a weight cut into the hundreds? How much stronger could he be? Could he go 1100 at 110? At 100? Could he go 1100 at 100? Like that would be something very, very impressive.
That would be insane.
But I think it's possible, right? Like if you think about, if he keeps the same body composition or similar body composition that he has now, but sits around that 103 to 105 mark, does a nice easy cut 99.9, comes in weighing 99.9, goes back up to 103, 105 on the day with some rehydration, some glycogen replenishment. And is there another 60 kilos somewhere there? Maybe.
I don't think so.
Oh, I'd love to see it. If he could do that at some point, I don't think there's a conversation anymore. I think that would be like, okay, you're just the GOAT now.
I think the only way, and again, this is me just being me, I think the only way that he could potentially scrap in another 60 kilos is if he competed in wraps, and he could add another potential, because so obviously his bench was 20 kilos like under his best. I'm not sure if he's pressed 600 in comp or not. I know he's pressed it in training, but like there certainly wasn't a whole lot more in that deadlift.
Not at the moment, but here's the thing, and this kind of leads into a whole nother topic that I'm sure we can branch upon, is like John Hack looks extremely healthy. John Hack isn't carrying any extra weight. John Hack, to me, a trained eye doesn't look like he's doing anything too extreme at the moment, just based on like he looks healthy, right? And you can kind of tell when people are starting to really push the boundaries towards performance. Health and longevity and performance tend to live on different ends of a spectrum or different ends of a dial. And when you're really, really pushed towards performance as a metric, the flip side of that is that health and longevity tend to take a back seat in those times, and vice versa. When you're really pushing longevity slash health, performance tends to not be a priority in those times at that acute moment.
Mm.
To me, it looks like John Hack's still pretty fucking healthy. So, what's the potential if like okay, like how far can we push this towards performance? Like what else could there be there?
Would you not say that he's at his current maximum performance?
Yeah, but this is the conversation is how long have people been saying, "Oh my god, that's crazy. He could never do more than that. That's unbelievable."
Well, I
3,
mean,
4
so
years, and every time it's
obviously
more.
from Ghost Clash, he went 1,043 at 1st of August 2022. Um, that's where I'm not quite sure which comp that was, but he went 1,022. So it took him nearly 2 years, or like 18 months, to add 20 kilos to his total.
Cool.
Which at
Easy.
that, which at that level, I'm surprised it didn't take longer.
Yeah, that's great.
But I mean, like when we're sort of talking about him looking athletic and jacked as fuck,
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, dude's fucking shredded.
yeah,
Yeah, so I think
I don't know.
that's a.
It would obviously like there. I'm sure there's a lot of like behind the scenes stuff that you know would be very interesting to take a look at.
I know he's had a few niggly injuries as well.
Mm,
There was something. Was there a hamstring there for a little while that was playing up?
potentially,
I think there was
um,
I think there was a hamstring that was playing up, or a quad or something that was playing up for a little while during this prep as well. So who knows how much that hindered the performance on the day? Like, was
yeah,
if prep wasn't
his
completely
adductor.
smooth sailing, adductor. Yeah, I knew it was something
Yeah,
around there. So yeah, like 100% healthy. Like, who knows? There could be more there, which would be pretty exciting. But taking nothing away from like what's there right now is just completely unbelievable.
he is definitely in a league of his own. Like the fact that he's totaling what super heavyweights do is
Mm-hmm.
just fucking outrageous.
Hmm. But to your point, like, do I think he's at his peak performance now? Like, no, I don't. Like, I think
Mm.
he's the best he's ever been, but I don't think that this is the best we'll ever see
I don't necessarily think it's the best we'll ever see, but
of
like
him.
obviously when we look at like health and performance, usually at a maximum expression of performance is usually when someone will quote unquote be less healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think at the moment, I think he's probably just found a really nice balance between maintaining a good level of health for the level he's at performance wise. But I mean, like it would obviously be curious to know where certain attributing factors are at in terms of like potential dosages and all that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, like again, not that I ever want to throw someone under the bus for um, supportive compounds, but I don't think it's any secret that he's gone from IPF lifting to no longer being in the IPF, and obviously his strength has skyrocketed since.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I would like I'm always really curious where people are at with compound usages for relative strength levels. So I know guys that have used ghastly amounts of compounds and frankly not been that strong.
Yeah,
I
which
know,
is crazy.
yeah, we've spoken about some of that stuff as well. But yeah, then you get other guys on the other hand, it's like they don't really use that much and they are so fucking strong.
Yeah.
I would like it again, like obviously it's none of my fucking business at the end of the day because I'm not his coach. I'm just a nosy fanboy on the internet. Uh, but it would be quite interesting to know like where his usage is at and whether there would potentially be room to like tweak some of those dosages to get him, you know, a little bit more. Like
Yeah.
looking at
And
his
I've,
squats, like his squats are at an all time high. His bench was 20 kilos under his best, and his deadlift was obviously all time high as well. So I'm like, everything is like absolutely trending in the right direction. But it's like, would there be room for him to squeeze, you know, another 15, 20 kilos out of his current, or out of his total at his current body weight? I don't know. I would
mm,
love to see him a little bit heavier. I
hmm
think I think what would be just an outrageously entertaining showdown would be if you could get Hack, Belkin, and Derek on the same platform in the same weight class and have them battle it out for like a substantial prize money pool. I think that would be fucking like if it was like, hey, cool, like there's, you know, 50 grand for the winner, nothing for the losers. You all have to be between 98 and 103. Have at it.
that would be fun.
Oh, that'd be so fucking cool.
Yeah, that'd be really cool. And if we look at, I've had I have not definitely not had conversations. I've listened to podcasts of John Hack where he specifically said, something to the effect of his goal right from the start all the way up until now is just to be a little bit better every meet.
Yeah,
And it was something along the lines of, I can't remember the exact thing, but it was like, it's just 3 to 5% better every meet
but I
on my
think that's a
total, and that's it. That's all he aims for. And then doing that over a period of time has put him in a position now. And it was, he said, 2 meets a year, 3 to 5% better each time was like something around the lines of like his thought process from when he started. And he's been able to do that all the way up until now. And that's now put him in the position where people are saying, this is ridiculous. This guy's the greatest of all time.
yeah.
His goal was never to be the greatest of all time. His goal was to be 3% better each time he competed and to just do that twice a year until he just couldn't do that anymore.
Mm.
And I think that that's a really good conversation to have around like what is your thought process and how long is your time frame, and are you looking too far in advance? Are you what's longevity look like for you, and what does performance look like for you? How are we periodizing performance and health? How are we periodizing performance longevity? What type of goals are we setting? And what's the process around setting those goals? And how are we structuring like phasic approach to training around those things as well?
So I think for me, I'll start with a certain part of that in terms of like what is my sort of definition or perspective on longevity. And that is just my ability to continue lifting weights for as long as I possibly can. If I think about some things that I would like to be able to achieve in the future, I would still like to be the guy that in his 50s is still able to go in and deadlift 250 kilos.
Hmm.
Like, I don't think a 250 kilo deadlift at 50 years old, when I will have had another 20 years of training under my belt, like, I don't think that should be an unrealistic target for me to hit.
No.
Um, I quite often, there's two guys in particular at GPC meets down here in Vic. They always seem to be at them. And these are like two guys in their 70s that still come and compete. They're like 76 and 77 years old. And, you know, they might only squat like 70 kilos. And they might only squat like 60 kilos and deadlift like 110. But I'll tell you what, people get more excited at those guys hitting those numbers than they get when they see a 30-year-old male squat 300 kilos. They're just like, whatever. But seeing a
Hmm.
guy like in his late 70s who's still powerlifting consistently, I'm like, that's fucking sick.
Hmm.
Um, I guess as well, like sort of like sidestepping away from powerlifting as a sport in terms of like longevity. It's like, I see, like, I look, obviously, I'm very close to my grandparents.
Hmm.
Um, my nan is more or less like very inactive comparatively to my grandfather. Like he's still quite active, and even though like he had his heart attack at New Year's Eve, he still gets a surprising amount done for a guy who's in his sick circumstances. Um, and I've always just looked at it like I've always kind of been the person that has seen people around me and seen limitations with movement, and I've always gone like I don't want that. Like I
Hmm.
want to be the person who I don't. My goal has never really been to be the strongest person ever. My goal has never been to be the best powerlifter. I'm like I want to be able to maintain a pretty good level of strength, which I do. I think I do a pretty good job at maintaining like decent strength year round.
Hmm.
Um, but like my thing is always like I want a good level of movement first and foremost. Like I don't ever want to be the person who like you know can't get the bench like a bench to meet their chest because I'm like, oh, my shoulders are really tight, and I don't want to be the person that's like I can't squat to depth because my hips are so tight. Like I would rather go cool, like I'll pivot and sidestep and make sure that I'm moving well so that I have a sense of longevity and so that my body doesn't fall apart on me. That has always been a priority for me personally.
Hmm.
Um, Purely just because of what I see around me from friends, from family, from clients. Like I don't ever want to be in a position where I'm going, cool, that's the gym done for me.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I think this is super interesting because, you and I agree on a lot of things and
Mm,
have very similar outlooks on a lot of things. And then, like, there's a topic like this where I don't think we disagree, but I also think we've come from very different backgrounds to where you're how old now are still lifting with next to no issues. You have a back issue that you manage, but lifting's the way you have has actually helped that with little flare ups here and there, but nothing like debilitating. To whereas my life in the gym has quite literally since the age of 12 been zero care factor for anything other than performance at the highest level of whatever the pursuit was in the moment. Like, no
mm,
care factor for my body, no care factor for what happens in 10 minutes' time. It has been in this moment, this is the thing that I have to do, and I need to do it like to the absolute maximum to get the maximum out of it. Otherwise, I'll never be the best in the world.
do you
And
want to know
quite
what
literally,
changed that for me?
what's that?
The back injury. So when I was younger, I was very much like, I will literally do whatever it fucking takes to be the best.
Hmm.
Like when I was playing basketball at the level I was playing at when I was younger, we had training pretty much every Sunday for sure. Quite often, I think it was like a Wednesday or a Thursday night, and we would have, so it may have been like a definite Sunday training. And then I think it eventually became like a Wednesday night as well. And then we had our game on Friday. And so obviously, like I had 3 designated sessions with the team. Um, but every single day, I would get home from school and I would go out. So we were pretty lucky. Like we had a big property when we were younger. We had a nice big concreted area where we literally had a basketball court mapped out like on the concrete. I was like, from where the ring is to where the foul line should be, where the 3-pointer should be, like all of that stuff was marked out.
Hmm.
And every single day I would go out and I was like, cool, I'm going to make X amount of free throws.
Hmm.
I'm going to make X amount of 3-pointers. And I'm not going to go inside and do my homework until I've done that. And then I would go inside and I would do my homework or whatever it was, like either that or in reverse But it was like every single day, I was like, I had quotas I had to meet. I would quite often like practice like dribbling skills and all the fundamentals. And I was like, I am going like in my head when I was younger, I was like, I'm going to play in the NBA. That was my goal.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Didn't matter the fact that I was like, short and white. I was like, I'm going to play in the NBA. Like, I'm going to be an amazing basketballer despite my physical stature. I'm like, I'm going to be just that fucking good that people won't be able to overlook at me.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until I was laying in a hospital bed in Alice Springs with a suspected broken back, not being able to feel my legs, that I was like, fuck.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I need to change direction.
Not even change direction, but it's just like, it realigned priorities for me.
Yep. Yeah, and see, like I've had the same thing with a ton of different injuries throughout the years, broken neck, like my knee that has just plagued my entire life, right up until this current day.
Hmm.
But I think that that's where I can draw a lot of value from for other people is like I feel like a big part of longevity is just not fucking giving up.
Yeah.
Like you just keep fucking going,
Hmm.
and like how bad do you want something? Like, okay, yeah, I have arthritis in my knee. I have no ACL. Guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to squat. Do you know why? Because I want big fucking legs. And does it hurt like hell? Absolutely. Do I take too much Voltaren? For sure. But like, I'm not going to stop because I don't want to be that guy that doesn't look like he lifts. So
Hmm.
I think a lot of the longevity also just comes down to how fucking bad do you want it? Like, how
100%.
bad do you want this? Are you going to keep going when it's uncomfortable? But then also layering over the conversation of like, I've now been doing this for 26 years.
Hmm.
I've now been training in the gym for 26 fucking years. That's longer than a lot of people that listen to this have been alive. In
Yep.
that 26 years, I've made a lot of fucking dumb mistakes. And you don't have to make the same dumb mistakes that I made. You just have to listen to me because I can guide you through all of the dumb mistakes that I have made and how to get to the other side without making them.
Hmm.
And I think that that's a big part of longevity as well is listening to people that have walked the path before you.
Yeah.
But I also think that it's worth noting performance doesn't have to be performance doesn't have to be completely neglected in the pursuit of longevity either.
No, I just think if you're going to be trying to push performance to the nth degree, I think there is going to be an impact on general health and longevity.
Yeah, I think it comes down to what your perception of longevity is, right?
Yeah.
So I've openly said multiple times, I didn't think I was going to live to 30. I'm turning 38 this year. I now don't think I'm probably going to live past 60, and I'm quite okay with that. That
For
to me
every
is
pod.
longevity.
Yeah.
Like I've doubled my expected lifespan. I'm living on borrowed time. I'm 8 years past where I thought my expiration date was. To me, longevity is like a daily thing. Like I wake up at the moment and I'm like, whew, fuck, here we go again. Like, didn't think I was going to make it this far. I get to the end of every day and I'm like, fuck, and just tick that one up to longevity. Like, I made it through another 14 hours. Who the fuck would have thought? I didn't think so. I didn't even think that I'd be here 8 years ago. So anything beyond like this very second to me is just like me ticking up another fucking win towards longevity.
Mm.
But it's also like very contextual, right? Like if you're a junior, a sub junior, and you're saying that you want to win a world title, chances are you're going to need some form of longevity in order to achieve that. Longevity in your lifting career, longevity in the way that you look after yourself outside of competitions and outside of pushing things hard in order to reach that because you're not going to be a powerlifting world champion at fucking 19 years old.
Or very low chance of.
If you're currently competing in local competitions and not winning, in 1 year's time, it's a pretty low chance that you're going to be winning world fucking titles, right?
Yep.
this is a sport that's going to take time. And if that's where you're at right now, that doesn't mean that you can't get to where you want to be. It just means that it's going to take some time to get there. So keeping that in mind is like, you need to push performance in order to reach the level that you want to get to. But you also need to make it time wise to the point where like you are actually in a position to do that thing that you want to do. Yeah.
Agreed. Like, for example, like Josh and I have had a conversation around what his
Dude, we need
goals
to
are.
stop managing Josh because he's going to start charging me for every fucking time we mention him. And like, I don't want to do that.
Well, we'll call it Client X. Client X and I have had the discussion around kind of like what some of his goals are over the next, say, like decade. And
Mhm.
Client X is still quite young.
Very young.
And
He was
again,
actually the person I was talking to this about the other day.
yeah,
Because it was a really fun conversation actually. He was kind of talking to me about, he's like, yeah, like when I started training, I was talking to some of the guys who I thought were really big and strong at the time when I first started, and I really looked up to them, and I asked them, what do I need to do to be at the level that you're at to hit these numbers that you're hitting? And the guy's response was just train really hard for like 3 to 5 years. And Josh was like, oh, dude, like at the time, I was just like, 5 years? That is so long. Like, that's going to take me so long to get to that goal.
mm,
Like, does it really take 5 years? Like, there's no shortcuts. And he's like, it's crazy to look back on that moment because I'm coming up on 7 years of training now. And I was like, 7 years. And I like kind of got out my cake and I was like, dude, this is like, I've been training for 26 years this year. And he was like, fuck, that's longer than I've been alive. I was like, yeah, it's a fucking long time. So you can imagine there's a lot of stuff that's been seen and a lot of things that have been done in 26 years.
yeah, like I've been training now for pretty much bang on 2 decades.
Yeah. So a part of that is like longevity.
Yeah, like if I look at, I don't know if there's been a period of time for say a month where I haven't trained in 20 years. Like even when I look back to like when I went on holidays to Spain back in like 2011 where I was away for like 5 weeks straight and I was pretty much just like eating and drinking my way around Spain, Portugal. If I went for a walk down to the beach and I saw pull-up bars by the beach, like you bet your ass, I would still go like, hey, I'm going to do a couple of AMRAPs of push-ups, pull-ups, and sit-ups,
Mm-hmm.
and like some lunges and shit like that for something.
Mm-hmm.
The only times I reckon I've gone, like a week or a couple of weeks without actually training is when I've been like chronically unwell and I
Mm-hmm.
physically haven't been able to like get out of bed.
Pussy.
I've had other sorts of exercise in bed, but it doesn't count as training. um, but yeah,
So
like I think
your conversation with Josh
yeah, so like we were
X.
speaking about client X. Yep, um, we were talking about like the things that he wants to achieve as a lifter over say the next decade. And he's
Mm-hmm.
like, look, I've been training for like 7 years. Um, never really had like an actual off season, and it's interesting. Like he and I like the amount of times that he'll send me clips from our episodes and be like, "Oh, does this mean I have permission to yeet my accessories?" I'm like, "No, Josh. That is a
Oh,
rule for everyone except for you."
I always say yes.
Of course, you fucking do, you cunt. But like, we have some pretty fucking outrageous goals that we are trying to chase, and like again, you and I have had this conversation a number of times, and I've had this conversation with Josh a number of times as well, where it's like he has a gross amount of potential to do some pretty amazing things in this sport.
Mhm.
But it's like if the constant like does if the desire to constantly be able to push forward means that you're never taking side or potential back steps, you actually aren't setting yourself up for long-term success and longevity. You're actually kind of setting yourself up to hit a point where like you either get severely injured, burnt out, or like you just kind of like lose the drive for it. Like how many young powerlifters have we seen, who started lifting when they're like 18, 19, got really strong really quickly, and then by like 23, 24, we're like, yep, I've had enough.
Yeah, and I think this is where powerlifting can differ from a lot of other sports where it
Yep.
is such a sport of attrition and it is such a
Mm-hmm.
sport of you need to put in the time. It doesn't have happen quickly. And it, to be brutally honest, it's fucking a lot of the time, it just doesn't even come down to skill. It just comes down to who can do it the longest and who wants it more. And we look at what powerlifting is. It's squat, bench, and deadlift, and this might be a topic for another conversation. But I feel like the skill level in those three movements is super low to almost non-existent if we compare it to like the skill of playing fucking NBA basketball. It's literally like my fucking mum can squat and she's the least athletic person I've ever seen in my life. And if
Yeah.
I walked up to her house right now and said squat, she would squat. It probably wouldn't be the prettiest thing in the world, but with a little bit of training, like she could definitely fucking do it with some load. Could she fucking dunk a basketball? Could she, shoot a 3 point? Could she fucking run off a screen and like take a 50-yard fucking jump shot? Fuck no. Not with no amount of training would that ever fucking happen because the skill isn't there. And so all this tells me is that powerlifting is a low skill sport. We know this. People won't admit it because it will hurt their feelings, but come on. Like we know this is the fact. It's a low skill sport. It's a strength sport, and the longer you do it, the higher your chances of success are going to be. So, if we know this, we can kind of then say that within powerlifting, contrary to what other sports might be like, longevity and performance kind of run hand in hand. Whereas I say to you, you're an NFL player and you're 18 years old, you're coming out of college, you want to make it to the NFL, I'm not talking about longevity to you because even if you make it to the NFL, average career might be 2 years. I think the average NFL career is 3.5 seasons or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah.
We're not talking longevity. The goal is to
No.
get you to the NFL. The goal is to get you fucking paid. And then whatever happens beyond that, you're on fucking borrowed time.
Yeah. And I think
Longevity isn't a conversation. Performance is a conversation. How can we push the envelope as high as possible? It's the same in the NRL. It's the same in the AFL. We're not talking longevity. We'll talk about longevity once you're there. Powerlifting, I feel like longevity needs to be in the conversation because without it, you're just not going to win.
well, I think as well, like if you are looking at like say NFL, NBA, that sort of thing, like obviously the pay packets that are on the line for those people. Like you don't want to, like, as you said, like you don't want to be having the conversation of like, how long can we get you to last? Like, we just need to get you to the fucking dance, and then we'll figure out what the fuck we're doing from then. Then we'll find you some fucking fancy shoes, some nice clothes, and all that sort of shit. But we just need to fucking get you in the door.
Mm-hmm.
I think when we look at obviously the overall athleticism, like there's obviously a lot of shit that can go wrong in those sports, just as like there's a lot of things that can go wrong in powerlifting. Um, it's weird. Like I think when we look at the sports as well, I think you know kids, whether it's kids here in Australia, kids over in America, there are going to be a lot of people that grow up being like, oh, I want to be a pro footballer or I want to be a pro bowler, like whatever it might be. Whereas here in Australia, it's like I don't think many people grow up being like, oh, I want to be a pro powerlifter because there's no such thing.
No, they're trying to make it a thing now, but even so, it's not like pro I can live off this or pro
Yeah,
I can get my bag. Like you're
like
making
how
five
many?
hundred dollars. Cool.
Yeah, like obviously there are like rare cases like like Nightmare on Mulder Street where there's a 20 grand first place.
20 grand. Oh, fucking
But
cool. Like,
it's
that's
like
gone next week.
it's like yeah, for some people like that's a month of business.
Yeah, sick. So what? 20 grand. Like, fucking hell. Like that.
Yeah,
I wouldn't, I know that that makes it technically like professional because you're getting paid, but come on.
like yeah.
It's
But
20 grand. It's like,
this is where I kind of feel like the conversations are different because the outcomes are significantly different as well.
yeah. And I look, if we
And
want
it's
powerlifting,
also a highly niche sport. Like I don't think like if I say took a video or if I took the video of say Joe squatting 1,000 pounds and I went and showed, you know, if I went to a family reunion and I showed people him squatting that, they'd probably be like, okay, like I don't really get it. But if I showed them a video of Wemby just like standing there and just like blocking people like this, or that video of that like 7'8" high schooler that dunks without his feet leaving the ground,
hmm
they're probably going to look at that and go, "Oh wow, that's fucking insane."
hmm
The viewpoint of athleticism, I think, is significantly different, as you said, because the skill level required to be exceptional at those sports is vastly different. Like
hmm
in powerlifting, like the main like attribute that you need to master is just strength. Whereas you take a footballer and it's like you need to be strong, you need to be fast, you need to be agile. Like there are a lot of other attributes that need to be maintained at a very high level for you to be successful. Like you need to have great endurance. Like there are
and you need the
multiple,
skill of the sport. Like,
yeah,
these are all physical attributes. Then you need to be able to have, like, can you read a game? Can you read a defense? Can you read an offense? Can you catch? Like, mental things like, can you lead a team? Can you take direction? Can you make decisions on the spot? Like, none of these things are required in powerlifting.
yeah,
They say go, you squat, you stand up. Like, there's no decisions to be made. It's like,
yeah. I think as well, like again, because it is literally just you up on the platform doing the lift. Like, sure, the coach can like you know play funny buggers coming into third deadlift to try and make people make silly mistakes,
oh yeah,
which like coaches
but
will obviously try and do that on the sidelines as well. But because obviously in a team sport setting like basketball, like football, it's the guys on the field are the ones that need to make the decisions around what they're going to do, as you said, based on what they see, based on what they're reading, and then kind of like reactively based on what happens. Like again, perfect example is on Saturday night. There was a play we were running. It's like, yeah, we know that every time this guy comes up to set a screen, they're double teaming the guy who is trying to utilize the screen, and the ball's just getting either turned over or a stop's occurring that we just don't want to have happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to play this run in place of, because they're going to anticipate we run this play. We ran a secondary play that, frankly, like the junior coach had showed us like on the spot there. And we're like, yep, cool, like they know what to do, and they go out, they run that, and like it just disorientates the opposition to the point where they're not sure what we're going to do next. So then when we settle back into our groove, it's like, oh, cool. Like we have an option up our sleeve as to what we're going to do based on what the opposition does in terms of how good their defense is.
yeah. Look, I think to kind of tie a little bit of a knot in this conversation, and hopefully at some point provide some takeaways for someone. This was been a bit of a shit fight, and we knew it was going to be, but I still think that there's some value here. Is that I think it's super important when we're talking about things like performance and things like longevity that, one, we I think it's important that we establish the meanings of the language that we're using so that we're on the same page on what does performance mean to you? What does longevity mean to you? If we're talking to Ben, longevity means lifting in the gym when he's 70 years old and deadlifting 250 kilos for reps and being the baddest old man in the gym with a grey beard and a center belly. Like, that's longevity to Ben, and that's fantastic. the decisions that we make can be layered over that with or have through that lens, and it might look completely different to if you're talking to me and you say, what is longevity? Or when we say longevity, what does that mean? And I say, living past fucking 30 is longevity to me. Well, like, great, that's going to reframe a lot of the decisions that we make,
Mhm.
even if longevity is the goal, because longevity is different. So
Yeah.
I think establishing language parameters is a really good place to start. And then once we have that in place, that now we're on the same page. Now we're using the same language, and now we can structure an approach from the goal backwards. And I think that that's probably a logical next step is like, what's the goal? And the goal, look, we could probably do a whole podcast on goal setting, and I think we probably should. But what's the
Mhm.
goal? Meaning, like, what are we running towards versus what are we running away from? I think is an important uh, kind of context to frame within. Like, I want to be world champion powerlifter is what I'm working towards, and what I'm working away from is I don't want to be the fat cunt that everyone picks on in school anymore. They're two very contrasting goals that I think highlight a desire to progress from two different angles that I think uh, put you in the best frame of mind to succeed. So once we have that in place, then we can just build out from there. Like, okay, if longevity looks like living past 30 and you're 38, sick. Like, we're just going to throw caution to the wind and try and make you world champion because that's your goal.
Mm.
Whereas if longevity is lifting 250 for reps at 70 and you're mid 30s, we probably need to focus on movement quality so that we don't fuck your shit up and you're out of the gym in 2 years' time.
Mm. But I feel like as well, depending on what your scope is within longevity, like if my scope is going at 50, I want to deadlift, 250 for reps. It's like, cool, that's a 20-year longevity scope. If I still want to be lifting weights in the gym at 30, that's like a 40-year scope. If in 18 months, if I want to be, potentially totaling somewhere between, 750 to 780 at under 100 drug free, it's like, cool, that's a different scope. And then I feel like, there's scope and performance that kind of get interweaved together. And it's like the approach will be relative to the balance that we find there.
Yeah.
If my goal was like, again, if we're sort of talking to someone who's like, I want to be a world champion within 12 months and I'm just getting started in local comps and I'm coming dead last, it's like, okay, cool. Does the scope actually line up to the performance goal?
Mm-hmm. And there's performance management. There's expectation management that needs to happen within that as well.
Yeah, like I've got a friend of mine who's a coach, and I remember a couple of years ago he was telling me about a consult that he had, and a guy came in. He's like, "Oh yeah, my goal is to deadlift 400 kilos." His best deadlift at the time was 192 and a half,
Nice.
and it's like the reality is a 400 kilo deadlift has only been achieved by a handful of people worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
It's not to say that you potentially can't, but the 2 year goal that you've set to be able to achieve that's probably not realistic.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where I think like there kind of needs to be an intersection of a bunch of different things to kind of have like if we're like outcome orientated here, all the influencing factors that are coming in from all these different points, it's like longevity, performance, expectation, all the other factors that does make up someone's ability to perform. Like, does that equation balance out? And if not, why the fuck not? And what can we do in order to get it back to balance?
Yeah, and
As
I
much
think
as I don't think there's a huge amount of room um, for quote unquote balance. Like, I think if you're trying to push performance, there needs to be a degree of imbalance.
that does. I agree with you, and I think that's where phasic training approaches are come in, and I think they're really important to have
Yeah.
periods of extreme imbalance and then periods of like trying to restore a little bit more balance with an eye to longevity, knowing that the longer you do something, the chances are the better you're going to get at it.
Yeah.
So obviously that time also plays a role in performance. So it's just trying to manage all of those factors in the best way possible, and not trying to push all levers to 1,000 at once.
Yeah.
It's picking and choosing which lever to push and pull at the right time. And I think probably a fantastic place to end is that no one gives a fuck about junior records. So
Or master
keep
records.
or masters records. So keep an eye on at least some form of longevity to try and get yourself out of juniors. And if you're chasing junior records, don't.
It's that simple, guys. You heard it here.
Yeah, just don't, because it's fucking not a real record. Just being younger than someone else is it's that's not real.
So on that note, on Monday, I actually hit uh, the Australian men's record for men born in November of the year 1990 on the date of the 29th, who actually benched at that specific time. I actually hit that world and probably national record as well, because I subcategorized it enough to meet the standards of what I was doing. So go me.
Nice work, man. Put that in your bio.
It's already in there.
Yeah. So yeah, just get out of juniors. Like make it out of have an eye on making it out of juniors. That's what I feel like we should probably frame it as, is like, let's look at making it out of juniors. Let's look at like actual like numbers in the real world, and let's focus on that, because that's what's really important.
It's the only thing that's important.
I wouldn't go that far, but
I
it is
would. I
of
would.
great importance.
If you're claiming you're a junior world record holder, it's like, that's cute.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Look, I am saying that tongue in cheek.
I'm not.
I am. And the reason why I'm saying that I say it tongue in cheek is because I know a lot of really good junior lifters who do hold junior world records, but it's then just going to be a matter of time until they reach open and they set open records.
Yeah, but I think that's what we're talking about, is like the open records are what matters. And if you do it in juniors, and you know we see these juniors that are so fixated on doing as many comps as they can do before they out age the junior category, and in the long run, that's what's hurting them. Is like, at the end of the day, no one really cares what you did as a junior. They care about what you do right now. So if you all of a sudden age out of juniors and you're like way down the list in your weight class on where you should be, like it might be a good idea of like having a look of where you stack up against your weight class in the open division, and having an eye on being competitive there is
I'm just going to
what I would lean towards. And that's coming from an old man.
a very old man.
But it's also coming from an old man that played extremely high level sport as a junior in age group competitions, and that never gave a fuck about that.
Well, I mean, like the reality is, you still are just within the sub masters category. You're almost a masters when it comes to powerlifting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm a master's when it comes to life too. To be honest.
So, looking at, I mean, the crazy thing is, do you know what the biggest total is in Australia ever set by a junior? 11:05.
Oof.
That was Dylan. He was 23 when he went 11:05 at Pro Raw.
Dylan's a great example of this.
100%. Like, when was the last time he competed?
Yeah.
Like, if I go onto his, like, he's what done. He's on 6 comps.
That's outrageous. He's so damn strong.
His first comp he did.
He's looking very fit at the moment.
Yeah. His first comp, he went 9:15. Then he went 9:80 at Pro Raw 10. Went 1,062 at Big Dogs. 11:05 at Pro Raw 11. Went 1,007 at Big Dogs 4, and then went 1,002 at Battlegrounds in 2022.
That's when he tore his quad.
Yeah,
I'd love to see him make a return.
me too.
He could compete in 140s.
Yeah,
He's under
Like,
140 now, I think.
yeah. Like if we're going, so just for curiosity's sake, if we go, so this is okay. So this is where I'm like, junior or not junior. If we're looking at like great lifters across the board, the number one lifter in Australia in like Raw plus Wraps by dots is a podcast favorite of ours who we've spoken about a few times, and that's Alana.
Yeah, Alana's a weapon.
Yeah, she's got 616 dots.
Do we really like coefficients, though?
Yeah, probably not.
I mean, as a big old man, I can tell you, no. We don't.
I think it is.
But also, as a very weak man, we can tell you maybe we do, because it helps me out.
Like, I think if we're looking at, like, I think at the end of the day, powerlifting is a sport that is judged by your total. That is what wins a competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, again, that's why I love Big Dogs, because it's literally just a fuck your coefficients. Like, it's just the who is the best lifter. But I also think at the end of the day, if we are looking at who is a great powerlifter, I think that can be a great way to kind of go like, relatively speaking, who is sensational at what they do. And I think that's a great way when we can use like a coefficient.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up hack. Where are you? Again, for the sake of dots, at the American Pro last year, he had a 652 dots. So large.
It's a big number. Very big number. So yeah, cool. Hopefully there's some good takeaways there for people.
Yeah.
Do you remember what we spoke about? I remember nothing.
Yeah, we know that though.
Surely there was something there that someone can use.
You'd hope so.
If you've made it this far, we very much appreciate you.
So, for example, obviously, going on a little bit of a tangent back to Hack, he had a 662 dots from the weekend. That is someone who, again, is at the pinnacle in terms of the best sort of like light to middleweight powerlifter, but also just one of the best powerlifters from a dots perspective as well.
Yeah, but okay, so how did he increase his dots?
He got better.
He lifted more weight.
Yeah.
His total got bigger.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, at the end of the day, it's just a game of getting stronger.
Yeah.
And getting stronger takes time. And the longer that you can do it for, the stronger you're going to end up getting.
Yeah. Like, he has a lot of comps listed on here.
Yeah.
Like a lot.
Yeah. And I've had a look at it a couple of times. I try to stay off open powerlifting, to be honest, but I have looked at it a couple of times. And
But like he's been competing for a decade.
Yeah, been competing for a decade, and like we said,
Yeah.
an hour ago, he takes time away from powerlifting to work on other qualities as well,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously then builds a base. And if we're talking about performance from a strength perspective, a powerlifting perspective,
Mm-hmm.
having the ability to build a big broad base of general qualities, general
Yep.
fitness, general athletic qualities from gives us then a bigger, broader, more stable base to build up from, to build our
Mm.
pyramid up from. When we're
Yep.
talking about peaking, we like to use the analogy of building a pyramid, and
Wider the
if
base, higher the
the
peak.
wider the base, the higher the peak. The higher the peak, the stronger you're going to get. So, spending time away from quote unquote performance in the sense of like what a what a young, inexperienced lifter might think is chasing performance, which is just going into the gym, maxing out, yeeting singles, competing twice a month, every month for the first 400 years of competing. That's not necessarily chasing performance in the sense that it's not going to lend itself to longevity in the sport. It's going to lend itself to getting better quickly to a point and then just fucking falling off the planet because your arms fell off.
Mm.
Whereas if you think of this as I'm chasing performance now, I'm in competition prep. My goal right now is to get as strong as I possibly can and build that peak off the base that I have. Okay, post competition, I'm still focusing on performance, but the metric that I am gauging performance off at the moment isn't my 1RM strength. It's how broad of a base can I build so
Mm-hmm.
that next time I peak, my peak can be higher. And that's framing performance, and that's framing language around what is performance at different points throughout the year to build a long, prosperous career towards the direction that you want to go.
Yep. I think that's perfectly put.
Fuck yeah. Thanks everyone for listening. And at least at 2 hours and 8 minutes, at least something was said that was somewhat coherent. I gotta go,
Fuck,
man.
we
I
could
gotta.
talk a lot of shit.
Oh, absolutely. Look, this week's been an absolute shit fight. We do have some really well planned episodes coming up, but we appreciate you listening to this one because this was a last minute one. Ben had technical issues. Nick
Oh,
had
fuck.
university issues. We're recording like about 5 minutes prior to uploading the episode. And this is what you do when you commit to doing something, you just get it done.
That's it.
All right, man. I'm going to go. I've got some stuff to do this other.
All right, mate. Enjoy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.